Okay, today we're going to be looking at lesson 7.4, which is scientific notation. And what we've been doing is we've been figuring out our rules for exponents. That's what we've been learning in lesson 7.1 and 7.2. And we were talking about products in 7.1, and then we talked about quotients in 7.2. So today we're going to express numbers in scientific notation, and then we're going to work on finding the products and quotients using those rules that we have already learned. Okay, so scientific notation is simply just a number that is wrote in the form of a times n to the 10th power, which is basically just shorthand for standard form, okay? And since I've already kind of got standard form here, let's go ahead and bring it in. Okay, standard form is just how we write our everyday numbers. So an example here, this guy right here, this is in standard form, okay? So we're going to be taking this into scientific notation, but just how we write our everyday numbers, that's what standard form is, okay? All right, so kind of zooming back up here. So on number 1, write each number in scientific notation. And I don't really remember rules like if you move it right, it's positive, left, negative. I don't do all that. What I do is I just look at this guy right here. And if he's bigger than 1, I know I'm going to have a positive exponent because he's a pretty big guy. The other thing I know is that I have a decimal point right here, and that guy has to get all the way down here to between the 2 and the 0, because I have to have a number between 1 and 10 on scientific notation. So when I move my decimal, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So I'm going to have 2.01 times 10 to the 8th, and it's positive because it's a big number. It's bigger than 1. So now if I go over here and look at number 2, okay, this is what I consider a small number. This guy is less than 1. Again, though, it has to be between 1 and 10. So my decimal should end up here between the 5 and the 1. So when I count it over, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, I'm going to have 5.1 times 10, and since it's a small number, it's going to be to the negative 5th power. Okay? So again, just to recap there real quickly, if I have a big number, so something bigger than 1, I'm going to have a positive exponent, and if I have something smaller than 1, I'm going to have a negative exponent. And that front number has to be between 1 and 10. All right, so now looking down at the next example here, it says write each number in standard form, and again, that's just kind of how we write our everyday words, okay, or everyday numbers, okay. So again, I see I have a positive exponent, and a positive exponent means that number should be getting bigger, okay. So I'm going to take 6.32 times 10 to the 9th. And so when I'm doing this, I'm going to move this decimal over 9 spots, making it bigger. There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And in place of all of those little humps, I've got a bunch of zeros. Okay, so my final number should look like 632. And then I'm going to have 5 zeros tacked on. And then I'm going to go backtrack, and I've got to put my commas in there. So this is saying 63,200,000. Again, positive, make the number bigger, okay? So on the flip side of that, if I have a negative exponent, I'm going to make that number smaller, okay? Again, realize that the decimal's there, and I'm going to move it over 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 spots. So it's going to be 0.000, 3 more zeros, 4. And that would be what the standard form for that looks like. All right, now this one says express in both scientific notation and standard form. Okay, so I've got to have 2 answers for these guys. Now, when I'm looking at these, if I look at this, this is a multiplication problem. Okay, so when I'm looking at this, I'm going to remember my exponent rules, so I know I'm adding exponents. But my front numbers, just like in the monomials, we're going to multiply them, okay? So when I start this off, 3 times negative 4 is negative 12 times 10 to the, and again, add the exponent, so 7 plus 8 is 15. Now, I do have a problem here. My problem is this guy is not actually in scientific notation yet because this is a 12 and it's not between 1 and 10. And that's something that we're going to fix. So I'm going to go ahead and take it into standard form and see what it looks like all wrote out. And then we're going to take it back into scientific notation. That way it'll stay between 1 and 10. Okay, so this guy right here, though, is not an answer because this is not between 1 and 10. So when it says times 10 to the 15th, I'm going to move that decimal out 15 places. Okay, so I've got negative 12. And since my decimal point was right here after 12, that means I've got to move it over 15 or 15 zeros. So 3, 6, 9, 12, 15 zeros. Backtracking for the commas. All right. So now when I want to put this back into scientific notation, I need that decimal point to end up right there. Okay. So it's going to be 1.2 times 10 to the, I know from here to here is 15. One more spot would be 16. So to the 16th power. So 1.2 times 10 to the 16th. Now I need to come up here and erase that decimal. Well, maybe I'm going to erase it. No, don't do that. All right, got that decimal erased. Okay, so this right here is going to be my final two answers. Okay, all right, so let's take a look at another product here. Again, I'm going to multiply the first two. So I'm going to take 1.4 times 3.7. All right, and when I get that, I end up with 5.18. So that's awesome. We're right here between 0 or 1 and 10, so that's good. All right, times 10 to the, again, I'm adding, so I'm going to end up to the 4th power here. Okay, so now when I write this out into scientific notation, I've got the 518, and I'm going to move that decimal 4 spots to the right, so it's going to tack on 2 more zeros. So I've got 51,800 there, and those will be my two answers. Okay, all right, example C. Oh, next page. Okay, example C. Now, anytime we have a squared, so anytime we've got this guy right here, that means write it out twice. Okay, so I'm going to take 9.8 times 10 to the 11th, and I'm writing it out twice. Okay, all right, so now I am going to do my multiplication here. I'm going to multiply this guy and this guy together, and when I do that, I end up with 96.04 times 10 to the, and again, we're going to add the 11s up and get 22. Now, unfortunately for us, that's going to be a whole lot of zeros, and on top of that, this guy is not between 1 and 10. So I'm going to have to go ahead and backtrack to scientific notation at the end again, just like we did in example A. All right, so I know I've got 96.04, and since this guy took up 2 of my spots, I'm going to have 20 zeros left over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And 20, okay? Backtrack, putting your commas in there. And there's my answer. Now, when I put that in scientific notation, I'm going to have 9.604. And again, I know from here all the way to that right there, I know that that's 22 units. And I'm going to move one more, so that'll be 23. So times 10 to the 23. Okay? Again, they have all kinds of rules if you read the book on this stuff. I just like to try to use common sense and just know if I'm kind of adding on another zero or whatnot. Okay? All right, let's go ahead and go down to the next example here. All right. And now we're going to be doing division. Division is still subtraction. Okay? So I'm going to go ahead and divide the front numbers. So I'm going to take my calculator, I'm going to divide this out, and when I do that, I end up with 2.5 times 10 to the, and since I'm doing division here, this guy right here, I'm going to subtract. So 10 minus 8 is 2. So now when I write that, I'm good to go. That is scientific notation because it's between 1 and 10. So now I'm going to go ahead and just write out the number, moving it 2 spots over, and I get 250. Okay. All right, now let's go over here to example B. And we need to look at what happens when we're subtracting that negative. We got to be really cautious of this. First thing I'm going to do, though, is I'm going to go ahead and divide this out. And when I do that, I get 1.06 times 10. Now, when I'm coming up with my exponent here, we need to be careful. We are taking negative 7 minus negative 4. Okay, so I'm just going to make a subtraction problem out of these two. So when I do that, this becomes a double negative becomes a positive, and I end up with negative 3. So my exponent in here will be negative 3. Now again, this is in scientific notation because it's between 1 and 10, so I just need to write it out. It's negative. Again, negative exponent means make it smaller. So I'm going to move it 2 zeros, 1, 0, 6. And those are going to be my two solutions. Okay? All right, now let's take a look at... Let's go ahead and take a look at the last problem here. There we go. All right, and it says that I earn $25.4 million a year, and I want to write the number in standard form first to start off with. Okay, well, standard form of 125.4 million would look something like this. I'm going to have the 125, and that's the 125 million, and then I'm going to have 400,000. That's what that means. Okay, so the decimal kind of breaks that up right there. That's where my comma would go. Okay, now writing that in scientific notation, all right, I know that I'm going to have it between the 1 and the 2 times 10. Again, it's a big number because it's over 1. All right, and I know 3, 6, 8, 3, 6, 7, 8. So times 10 to the positive 8. Okay, all right, now on this last problem here, it says to go ahead and find out 2.5 times that amount earned, okay? Now, there's a couple of ways you can do this. I think the easiest way is just to come right back up here, use this guy, and just multiply it by 2.5, okay? So I'm going to take my 125,400,000, and I'm going to, on my calculator, multiply that by 2.5. Now, when I do that, I get 313,500,000. And now to put that into scientific notation, since it's asking for both, we need to make sure we're in directions, asking for both here. Again, I'm in between the 3 and the 1 times 10. And then I've got 3, 6, 7, 8 again. So it'll be to the 8th power. And that is going to be my final solution. All right, that concludes lesson 7 4 notes. Now you need to go ahead and complete the bookwork if there was bookwork assigned.